Thank you. Welcome, committee members, board members, staff, and our online attendees to our Toronto Seniors Housing Quality and Tenant Engagement meeting of Tuesday, September 1st. This is my first meeting of September. I can't believe that it's September. So welcome to September. My name is Linda Jackson, and I have the pleasure of chairing this committee. We're live streaming on YouTube, and we have no deputations today. I'd like to acknowledge that September is World's Alzheimer's Month and Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. Today's meeting will solely focus on our strategic directions. It's a really important meeting, and we're really excited for the presentation today, and we really appreciate that so many people have taken the opportunity to join us today. With that, I will now proceed to our next agenda item, which is our land and African ancestral acknowledgements. I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation recognizes that we live and work on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat nations, and that this area is now home to a diverse population of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We recognize that Toronto is situated within the traditional territories governed by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations, the Two-Row Wampum Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch, as well as the Treaty 13 and Williams treaties involving the Anishinaabe and the Crown. These agreements remain in effect today, underscoring our shared responsibility as treaty people. Toronto Seniors Housing has benefited from these treaties and the resource of this land by providing essential housing services to seniors in Toronto. We are dedicated to furthering reconciliation initiatives, which include facilitating staff education on the historical and ongoing impacts of policies affecting Indigenous peoples. This encompasses topics such as the Indian Act, the residential schools, treaty violations, and the continued crisis surrounding missing and murdered Indigenous women and children, women and girls. I'm going to now go on to the African ancestral acknowledgement. Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation acknowledges the racism and injustices faced by individuals who are brought to this land involuntarily, particularly those affected by the transatlantic slave trade. We acknowledge the experiences of Black people who arrived in Canada seeking a better life following the abolition of slavery by the British in 1834, while also recognizing the structural, systemic, and individual racism that they encountered, which continues to persist today. This racism culminated in the tragic destruction of Africville, which was one of the largest settlements of the Black community in Canada. Toronto Seniors Housing is committed to recognizing all forms of racism, especially anti-Black racism, and is actively working to combat these injustices. I just ask you to take a moment to think about these acknowledgements. Thank you. We will now go on to our next agenda item, which is the new business and approval of the QTech public meeting agenda. Does any board member or committee member have any new business or amendments to the agenda? I don't see any hands, so hearing none, may I have a QTech member move that the September 1st, 2026 public meeting agenda be approved as presented? Jim and Jess, all in favor? Thank you very much. With all in favor, be it resolved that the September 1st public meeting agenda as presented is approved. We will now proceed to item 4, which is our conflict of interest. May I call for any declarations of conflict of interest? All right. I'm assuming that no one does with our strategic plan. So hearing none, we will move on to item 5, which is our action item review. And I'm just going to pass it to Grant to discuss the item on our list.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and through the chair and to the committee. So there's one action item. It's with regards to Bill 10 and Bill 60, and to provide a briefing note on that. I can let the committee know that that briefing note has been drafted. We were just doing one final check with some recent ONFA information that came out, and we have verified that. So we'll be distributing that briefing note later this week to the board.
Thanks, Grant. I really appreciate that. And what we'll do is, if we will actually make sure that if people have questions about that requested information, that we'll bring it up at the next meeting. So thanks for keeping that on our agenda, Grant.
Thank you.
if there's any questions about that, we will move on. We'll now proceed to item 6, which is our future strategic directions. And we're very excited to pass this on to
Madam
Grant.
Chair, sorry, Just and Brenda have their hands up.
Oh, sorry. You know what? I don't have it on my full screen yet. So go ahead, Jess and Brenda.
No,
Thanks,
no.
Fareed. Brenda, did you have a question?
No, it was just to tell you that Jess had his hand up.
Okay, Jess, did you have a question?
He's on mute.
You're on mute.
Bottom left. The bottom left, Jess.
Okay, now I got it. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself in my screen as opposed to in the box. Yeah, regarding the other action, which says it's completed, Deanna, is there an update on the CAF funds, and when will that be released to the various buildings so that they can plan to spend their money before the end of October?
Yep, through the chair to the committee. So the CAF budgets are allocated at the beginning of the year in each building. The CSCs who work with the tenant volunteers on spending that budget maintain it as folks go to understand how the total is decreasing, I guess, as they execute and fund certain events that they're having in the portfolio. So we provide that information, those updates to the CSCs regularly. So that's something they can share on an ongoing basis, Jess, with the various tenant circles.
Yeah, there have been two people in the corporation who have recently joined or found new roles. And my concern is that the actual money spent as opposed to monies available for each building may not be reported in a timely manner to the tenant circles in order to have them allocate the funding.
So through the chair to the committee, I can take that back. Jess, it's probably sounds like it's due for another refresh for everybody to get the current state of their budget. I can take that away with the team, and that's easy information for us to share through the CSCs. So I can take that away.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks for grabbing that. And sorry, I missed your hand. Any other questions? All right, so we will get a report back on that at our next meeting. So without further ado, I'm pleased to pass this on. Again, I would like to actually thank everybody for joining this kind of special meeting. It's unusual that we just have one agenda item. This is for those online as well. A strategic plan gives us our direction and our vision going forward. And there's been a lot of work that has gone into this and lots of consultations. And I'm very pleased to hand it over to Grant, who's going to lead us through the discussions with the Beam group, and we will leave some room at the end, and I probably throughout as well for questions. Fareed and I had a chance to actually do a quick review and gave some preliminary feedback in some areas that we hope that there'll be some questions on with the group. So without that, I'm going to pass over to Grant now. Thanks, Grant.
Thank you. And through the chair, so as we start this item, I would like to introduce the Beam group who are here with us here today. So we have Jarrett Myers, Lily Clark, and Tasnia Reza. Jarrett, Lily, and Tasnia have been with us on this journey throughout the process to help provide input into the consultation efforts, to deliver the consultation efforts, and now as part of the strategic directions themselves. Also with us today, we have Christine Yan and Ayushman Banerjee. Christine and Ayushman are on our strategy and policy team and have been very significant participants leading this work internally within the organization as well. I want to thank everybody for this. It's been a truly collaborative effort to get to this stage. As the committee is aware, we've been working on the renewal of the strategic directions, ultimately to replace the previous set of strategic directions that expired or ended at the end of last year. To get to this stage in the process, we worked through a number of engagements with different groups to get feedback and input and looked at a number of different inputs. I'm going to ask Karen if she could put the presentation up on the screen. And I'm going to walk you through this presentation today. we'll have an opportunity to stop for questions in different spots. And the Beam group is here along with Christine and Ayushman to help support questions and context from the consultation and some of the work that we've been doing to get to this stage. And you can go to the next slide, Karen, that would be great. So in terms of the context and purpose, so the purpose of this report and what's before the committee today is to have a discussion with the committee with regards to the proposed or draft future strategic directions. And we'll walk through some of the elements that have changed in those directions. Ultimately, pending how the conversation goes today, our intent is to then bring this forward to the board for consideration for approval, ideally in October, is what we would like to do. The strategic directions are intended to set overall strategy for the organization. So what are the priority objectives and outcomes that we're trying to achieve as an organization? And I just want to clarify, they're not intended to be an operational work plan or a yearly work plan type of a view. And it's important to take that into consideration as we walk through the materials. This particular strategic directions view that we're putting in front of the committee today is looking at a 4-year horizon. So from 2027 to 2030. To get to this stage in the process, as I mentioned, there have been a number of different consultations. Over 644 different people participated in those consultations earlier in the year, primarily through the springtime. That included a number of tenants, both the Senior Tenant Advisory Committee, along with the regional tenant volunteer meetings, a lot of staff engagement. We had regional workshops. We had a staff engagement survey on this. Partners, the partnership table, Toronto Community Housing, the City of Toronto, OACH, RPath, and ultimately also, of course, the board and within our leadership and extended leadership team. I'll ask if you can go to the next slide, please. The framework for our strategic directions is noted on this particular slide. I'm not going to walk through this other than to just remind the committee that as we embarked on this project, we looked at using the existing framework for the strategic directions to help guide the future strategic directions. These are all the elements that are contained in that framework, and we'll be working through a number of those today. I will highlight that our intent today is to focus on the vision, mandate, commitment, values, objectives, and initiatives. The proposed KPIs and proposed strategic projects at the bottom, those ultimately form part of what we call the roadmap, and we will be continuing to work on those. You'll see some reference to potential KPIs and projects in the materials today. However, that's a piece of work that will go beyond the approval we're seeking to move forward with today. If you can move to the next slide, please. So just as a reminder, where are we starting from? This is an overall view of our previous strategic directions from 2023 to 2025, including our vision, commitment, mandate, and values. And you'll see we have the objectives and enablers. This is the framework in which we've been working in the last few years to report on this quarterly. And this is where you will see in a few moments when I get to a subsequent slide, some proposed changes building on the work that we've been doing. But before we get to that, I wanted to go through a few themes that we've come up with further to all the consultation and different inputs. You can go to the next slide. So several themes emerged during all of this effort, and I'll walk through a few highlights for these bullets, and then I'll pause for any questions before we get into actually the proposed changes to the strategic directions. So the first theme is aging at home, and this theme remains a central priority for TSHC, and it was noted in the context of our increasingly complex the increasingly complex needs of our tenants, which has posed challenges from our resource perspective. So we're looking at things like enhancing coordination, expanded partnerships, and more effective referral pathways to community service for our tenants. And these aspects are being considered in our future strategic directions. And you'll see aging at home as a key aspect in one of the proposed revisions to the objectives. Under tenant engagement, over the last few years, it's been noted that tenant engagement and through the feedback has continued to strengthen. So more tenants have been volunteering, more tenants have been organizing and participating in programs and contributing to policies and decision-making within and at TSHC. However, we do feel there is room to continue to deepen engagement and the tenant voice. So you'll see aspects about that in the future strategic directions. Safety and security, this has been a prominent issue from the get-go, from the beginning, and it continues to be a prominent concern for both tenants and staff. And that was noted and will continue to need focused attention. So you'll see that that is in the future strategic directions with that focus. Under property and building management, it was noted through things like our experience survey for the tenant experience survey that overall satisfaction with things like maintenance and building cleanliness is and remains high. However, there were opportunities for improvements in certain aspects of things like pest management and certain building repairs, for example. So those are areas that we know require continued attention, and some of the work that's already been focused on over the last little while is being reflected in the future strategic directions to build on it. Under responsiveness and communication, we noted that tenants are generally happy with getting necessary updates about what's going on in their buildings. However, there have been issues noted about things like closing out complaints and overall general responsiveness to tenant requests, as well as the importance of corporate communication. So aspects associated with those have been considered in the future directions. Under accessibility, this was an emerging theme that came up significantly during, in particular, the tenant consultations, and it reflects the increasingly complex needs of our tenants. Different aspects of accessibility have been considered in the future strategic directions, and you'll see that when I go through the details. With regards to staff commitment, this was noted as a major strength at Toronto Seniors Housing. So the passion and commitment of our staff, and was also noted, for example, how most tenants feel that staff treat them with respect, and also was noted that most staff believe in the services we deliver at TSHC. So we want to continue to build on this staff commitment in the future strategic direction. Some aspects about doing that are included. As well, organizational capacity was a theme that emerged. Staff noted that they are experiencing growing workload pressures, somewhat due to the increasingly complex tenant needs and our resource capacity at the organization. Things like additional training, clarification of roles were noted as opportunities to help support dealing with this. And then finally, innovation. It was noted that Toronto Seniors Housing has established a foundation for innovation. However, we can continue to foster a culture of innovation within the organization. We've looked at focusing on transformational innovation type initiatives, and this will help further establish TSHC as a leader in shaping the seniors housing sector. Now, before I get into the next slide, I'll just pause here for any initial questions, and then once we get through that, I'll move into the proposed changes. So I'll just pause.
Thanks, Grant. Let's see any. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just a clarification point, Grant. So this strategic direction 2730, I think it's already pretty much building on the strategic direction that we've had up until now. I see things here that I'm quite familiar with that we've talked about over a number of meetings. And now maybe this is coming up. Under each category, there are going to be any further points in terms of aging at home, action plan, tenant engagement, action plan, safety and security, and so on? Yes. So through the chair, you're going to see these elements reflected in different aspects of what I'm about to go into in the subsequent slides, and what are actually our proposed changes to our strategic direction. So each of these are reflected in different ways. All right. So we're going to cover all of this in a more comprehensive way of doing it, so we know where we're going. Yeah, and these are just the themes. I don't want to downplay them. These are the overarching themes that came out of the consultation efforts and some of the inputs. In the staff report that covers this material, there's a little bit more detail on each of these themes as well. And these were to help guide as we went into the strategic directions themselves as to areas we wanted to focus on. All right, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in, I think right now we're just trying to actually we're going to provide you a lot more information. So just, I think at this point, is there something glaringly missing, or so that we can get into the meat? Jess?
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee. It was, I believe, in the survey, tenant experience survey, that 61% of respondents felt that the TSHC helps them to get information to access the services they need. This is a good number in as much as it's more than 50%. But I think there's room to provide further information. I know that we're working with the Ontario Health Team leaders to reintroduce coordination services in TSHC communities. And our own building is now developing a NORC. Hopefully we'll expand on the 4 NORCs that are currently in TSHC buildings to provide coordinated services for people. And I think this is essential to allowing older people to feel comfortable and safe in their homes.
Thanks, Jess. And just because we're committed to making sure that people know what acronyms are, it's a NORC is a naturally occurring retirement community, and I'm sure we'll have more conversations about that. And I know that you're probably going to go into more detail with this area, Grant. But any comments?
As we get into the more detailed aspects that are coming up, Jess, you'll start to see where these things line up. And thank you for raising that. That's an important aspect.
I think we're good to go to the next because I think people really want to see it. And
right.
Again, I think we're not going to wordsmith. I think we really want to get to, we've had a lot of conversation and engagement on this. So we want to make sure that actually we're giving the team, really critical information as we go forward. All right.
All right. So thank you. And we can move to the next slide. So if we recall a couple of minutes back, I had a version of this that is our current or previous strategic directions. And just the way to navigate this, changes are shown in the sort of the orangey red font there. So I'll walk through that. So I'll start with the left-hand side, talking about the vision, mandate, commitment, and values. So overarchingly, through all of the different stakeholders that we consulted with and that I mentioned earlier, there was generally broad support for the language and the sort of the general statements around the vision, mandate, and commitment. So there was an alignment to sort of keeping those in place at some level. In particular, there were no proposed changes to the vision. Under the mandate and commitment, we did propose some language changes to sort of focus greater clarity and bring different aspects into them. So the mandate, we've changed it, as you can see now, to enable tenants to age at home in comfort and dignity, connecting them to the supports they need and want, and ensuring they have a voice in their community. This sort of builds on the existing or previous mandate. The commitment statement is more clear. It's a little bit shorter as well. To lead an excellent housing service delivery with motivated staff who focus on the unique needs and well-being of seniors in collaboration with tenants and partners. We elevated the position of staff in this statement, for example. And the vision of safe, diverse, and vibrant communities where tenants have a sense of inclusion and well-being, we've left it as is. So that original vision we're recommending and proposing at this stage stays in place. When it comes to the values, there were 4 values previously: respect, inclusion, accountability, and innovation. And through the consultation, the feedback was that people requested or suggested, could we replace innovation with empathy? And empathy is a really important value in the work that we do. And it was something that people felt they could line up and understand and embrace. With regards to the right-hand side of this slide, I'll just say initially, and then I'm going to go into the changes as we go through each of these. In our previous strategic directions, we had 4 strategic objectives and 2 enablers. So 4 objectives, 2 enablers. What you see on the screen now are just 5 strategic objectives. And the 2 at the bottom, the 4th and 5th one, were previously enablers. And this is feedback we got about the importance of really the opportunity to elevate and bring all of these strategic objectives into the same place. So in terms of looking at them, enablers in some respects was seen to maybe relegate them into a different position in terms of how we might look at them. And they're very important to all be prioritized. So to make that change now, instead of having objectives and enablers, we're proposing just to have objectives. And I'll go to the next slide. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually walk through some of the changes to these strategic objectives. And in some cases, you're going to see that there's a lot of continuity, and in other cases, you're going to see some more significant adjustments. So we'll start with objective 1. Just bringing out my reference sheet here. So This first objective of an excellent landlord remains very consistent with the previous strategic directions. That was objective 1 and remains the first objective in the proposed revisions. Under the 3 initiatives, and the way to read this, where it says 1, 2, and 3 here, those are the initiatives or strategic initiatives. We are proposing language changes. However, strengthening safety and security as initiative 1, ensuring clean and well-maintained buildings as initiative 2, and promoting stable tenancies initiative 3 line up very much with the previous strategic directions as the 3 areas of focus to continue to focus on within this aspect of our strategic directions. You'll see some of the proposed KPIs there and some of the proposed projects. I'll just go through it very quickly. This list of projects and KPIs, as I noted earlier, is not necessarily the final list. It's there for reference purposes. And I will flag that we have put an asterisk next to some of the projects where they're felt to be in the transformational innovation space. So you'll start to see some of those asterisks popping up. It's to help illustrate where innovation is embedded within the strategic directions, as well as you'll see in a few minutes, there's actually a strategic initiative dedicated to innovation as well. But under strengthening safety and security, we have developing building-specific community safety and wellness plans. This is something we're already working on plans to do with the community safety unit, and then enhancing our security liaison partnership with the community safety unit at TSHC. Under ensuring clean and well-maintained buildings, some of the projects include implementing and reviewing the pest management work plan. So we know that's a key priority area. And then conducting a building maintenance service standard quality improvement project. So looking at opportunities to improve the standards around maintenance. And then number 3, promoting stable tenancies. This is where we start to get into some of the training I talked about. So deliver role-specific training to support stable tenancies, enhance tenant onboarding, continue working with the OH, and continue programs with things like Service Canada. This particular objective is very consistent between what we had previously and the future that's been proposed, but with an enhancement to how we look at the language and the types of projects and KPIs. And I'll go to the second objective now. I'm going to go through all the objectives, if that's okay, and then loop back for questions. So you can go to the next.
Sorry, Grant, I'm through the chair. I'm not sure. I was wondering whether we could actually stop at each objective, because it's a lot of information to go through and then ask committee members to come back in.
For sure, we can do that too. So I'll pause then at this point and take any questions.
I've got a couple of suggestions. They're not questions, and they have to do with the KPIs and the strategic projects. I mean, if you look at some of the, obviously all strategic projects are not created equal, so I don't expect them all to be the same. But I'm thinking, for example, on the second blue box under the second objective, conduct a building maintenance service quality improvement project. That's fairly passive, right? I mean, I think, so you conduct the building maintenance. What do we do with it? So I'm kind of looking at projects that are a bit more impactful and a bit more proactive, rather than sort of simply saying, we're going to conduct this or do that. So that's one, and I know that the chair said we're not wordsmithing here, but I think this is more than just wordsmithing. And the second one, I think, which I'd ask staff to consider, I've always had some concerns with the state of good repair. And I know that we don't have ultimate control over the repair of the buildings that we manage. But I think there's got to be something and some KPI that speaks to capital investment based on state of good repair. And this is where I think, we've got a new director, I think, or VP at Toronto Community Housing Corporation that's tracking these things. And it might be something that I think we've got to be tracking as well. And the reason why I make this, and this probably is posited within a broader comment, and that is, sometimes the strategic plan has to identify gaps in the work that we do so we can identify and fill those gaps. So it doesn't always have to be things that we know we can accomplish or we know we can achieve. So those two or three comments, I think, would be something that I'd be looking for as we go through these objectives. One is to ensure that the strategic projects are actually meaningful and impactful, and we're not just conducting or studying or doing something in that regard. And in this one in particular, if you're talking about safe, clean, well-maintained buildings, we've got to measure something on state of good repair. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure there are lots of smart people within TSHC and TCHC that can provide some direction in this regard.
Thank you, Fareed, through the chair. We will take that feedback and we still plan to work through those KPIs and strategic projects in more detail as well, and that's helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, and please feel free to that was not, it's not wordsmithing so much as like bringing those ideas forward, and then the team can come back, because I wasn't sure with your comments about the KPIs being for reference only. So hopefully we can identify the areas that we want to actually build out a little bit more. So that was a good start. So thanks, Fareed. All right, maybe we go to the next one if I don't see any other hands.
Okay.
All right.
We'll go to objective 2. Just wait for the slide to switch. There we go. Thank you, Aaron. So objective 2 is framed as tenant engagement and community building. And I'll just reference in the previous strategic directions, objective 2 was around tenant engagement. So there was a similarity. However, we've extended the definition of this to now include community building. And this is what we've heard throughout the consultation activities and from the different inputs that were mentioned earlier, is how we have to extend into community building along with tenant engagement. We have 2 proposed initiatives here. One is to empower tenants to thrive in their community, and the other is to amplify tenant voice. And I'll just add that this amplification of tenant voice is something that was there as well in the previous strategic directions. However, it's elevated in the context of a strategic initiative here. And when it comes to empowering tenants to thrive in their community, we've got language there, for example, to describe that for tenants to, for us to proactively engage and empower tenants from all backgrounds to share their insights, skills, and experience in their own community, proactively engage. And this is work that we can build on that's already been happening. But to the feedback on the last one, there are some things that are aspirational in terms of the future here. So some of the things that are noted there under, for example, strategic projects, under empowering tenants to thrive in their community, we have developing a strategy for under-engaged buildings. So we have good data, for example, that we receive through both things like the tenant experience survey and some other work we do with doing planning in buildings. We have some aspects how we could work on under-engaged buildings and see what we could do. To develop a tenant-facing inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility strategy or idea strategy. This is something that's been discussed in other meetings and in previous dialogues about how the idea strategy at TSHC can extend out to tenants. This is about actually tackling that in a more precise way. And then the last one there is to introduce intergenerational activities at targeted buildings. So this is a transformational, innovative project that is being proposed. So those are examples of how we can focus in on empowering tenants to thrive in their community. And then with regards to amplifying tenant voice, you'll see this is where in the KPIs, for example, we link in with our senior tenant advisory and regional tenant meetings. Under projects, we have a Reviewing Community Connect Plus, our tenant engagement approach, and maybe we can look at the language associated with calling it a review. Ultimately, there are outcomes we would look to improve on the current Community Connect Plus tenant engagement model, and to enhance the tenant complaints process, something we heard about as one of the themes. So I'll pause on this if there are any questions.
Brenda?
Yes, thank you. Under empower tenants to thrive in their community, down to strategic projects. The second point about inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. I think this will come up in one of your other objectives. The accessibility I'm referring to here in terms of building accessibility, and I want to tie that in with the aging aspect. Our tenant population is aging in place and getting older, right? So it might be better off that I raise it, but I want to link obviously there'll be increased needs with the aging population, but there'll also be increased challenges for staff and staff training and staff resourcing. Okay, I think it's not just giving information. You're going to have to help people follow through on the information and referrals and connections. So I think that's maybe where we've underestimated the work and the effort involved. You know, giving information is not static, because once you may give the information, but they'll need help following through on it. So I can pick that up in another objective, but I just want to highlight that as something that will be a future concern. And it's coming, it's hitting us soon now.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. That's a good point. I see Jess's hand up, unless you wanted to comment, Grant.
I'm just going to say no, thank you, Brenda. One of the things that we will be doing a further review in the context of all of these projects is looking at things like resourcing capacity and other aspects about how we might have to obviously sequence things over the next few years and look at the complexity and how that might play into it. So it's a very valid point. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Can't hear him.
He's working on it, I can tell. Any luck, Jess? Can we help at all? Oh, there you are.
Okay, so couple of things. Are people hearing me twice?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting out of one of them. Better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is the new
Oh,
manifesto?
we're still getting the echo.
I'll get out and come back in again.
Anyone? I don't see any other hands up, just while Jess gets his. Yeah, Grant, maybe just a quick question on the accessibility, on the building accessibility front. It is an interesting point that Brenda raises. Like, that's a pretty big strategy, like to develop a strategy. And there is there an area that, and I can't remember, where there's actually where we're linking to the physical accessibility of the building, and even thinking about innovations for the future, that we should be leading the design for future social housing for seniors that are accessible from a because I worry a little bit that there's a lot of really big areas in that strategy that that you might need to unpack in some ways.
I think we'll take this back. There is an aspect under one of the objectives, objective 4, organizational excellence, that does talk about working on what we branded as a quality improvement project around accessibility, to help look at the barriers to accessibility that our tenants face and how we can further address removing those barriers. So actually doing a targeted piece of work on that would tie into the physical accessibility aspects. In terms of new buildings, new builds, things like that, I think that may be something we could take away and see how it could be reflected here.
Okay, thanks, Grant. Jess, how are you doing? Are we, do we just get one of you now?
I hope so. So regarding the KPIs and strategic projects, STAC has recently proposed a manifesto for seniors, which I don't see reflected here as of yet. So I'm hoping that it can be taken away, to be integrated into the plan, because in that manifesto we do talk about accessibility, the issues of ageism, and also creating a dementia-capable city. And I think that these are all important aspects of living in place that need to be reviewed and enhanced. Certainly the what is it called? There's a group of we were just talking about it the other day. A group from TSHC who are interacting with people who have needs, and I forgot what the committee is, but in our building it goes through Nana upwards to this other group, and so I think that that's important because people are not aware of it, and it needs to be looked at to for having some outlet for residents to engage with the CSC or SSC to have assistance. I think that's the important thing.
Okay.
There is another issue, but I'll get back to. Oh, I'll get back to it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jess. We can take that back. You might see some of that also showing up in some of the subsequent objectives, so we'll keep that in mind as we continue along.
Okay, I think we're good to go to the next.
So objective 3, previously this objective was called partnerships. So there's been a significant change to the name here, and we very purposely focused in on aging at home with access to services and support. And you know, it's about connecting tenants to health and social supports that they need and want. And we've gone through needs-based partnerships to describe that. There are 3 strategic initiatives proposed here. The first one is to enable access to health and community supports. This is about helping tenants find and navigate the seniors' care system to help them access the service supports they need and want. The second is to deepen collaboration with our partners. So this is to expand and strengthen our sector partnerships to enhance the service supports that are available to tenants to help them to age at home. And the last one is to foster innovation. So we felt it was really important to maintain a specific aspect of the future strategic directions around innovation, and in particular fostering innovation. And this builds on the comments and the themes earlier, where we want to promote a culture of innovation and establish TSHC as a leader shaping the seniors housing sector. Under Initiative 1, enabling access to health and community supports, you'll see KPIs linking back to our survey, for example, and we need to identify further KPIs around access. Some of the things in the project area: developing a tenant health literacy program, which is something we already have planned as part of the innovation work, and evolving our TSHC building and regional profiles. These regional profiles are really a resource library of information that is available to our staff to help connect tenants to those health and community supports. But they're quite significant in detail, and we need to be able to work on keeping them up to date so they're actually a more useful resource. Under deepen collaboration with our partners, you'll see some of the KPIs around the number of programs, the number of tenant interactions, and more initiatives with the City of Toronto. We know this is an area we've been focused on, for example. We want to develop and implement in the projects the partnership management framework, which is already in process, is something that's coming along. We want to expand innovative coordination and integration models to strengthen support delivery. So this is meant to encompass things like the integrated wellness model that we're working on right now, and some policy review around use of space, which we know is something that is very important to tenants. And then with regards to fostering innovation, a lot of this lines up with the innovation report that Tom actually went through in the last Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee, for example. And some of the metrics there, and we know we need to work on this, but we have identified the number of initiatives that would have been completed, the number of thought leadership activities, and we want to identify some staff-related KPIs in this space as well. Some projects, you'll see thought leadership strategy and plan for TSHC, that would be new. Develop the health and housing dashboard, something that's already in progress that we know is going to help us be able to use data and analytics in a new way to help inform how we can actually focus our efforts into areas that will be noted as priorities. To develop a TSHC research framework, to actually have a framework for how we either participate or drive research that we feel is important. Right now, we don't have that. Leverage findings from the TSHC social housing report. This is more commonly known as the Dr. Agarwal report, which was referenced as an example. And share best practices of supporting seniors with TSHC and other housing providers. So this is something we know the board is encouraged that we focus on, and we've explicitly put an innovative project to do that there. I'll pause and take any questions on this one.
Brenda, and then Jess.
Yeah, it's somewhat mentioned here, but I think for me, I'd like to see something a little more explicit about recognizing that, for example, objective number 1, enable access to health and community supports. Whether you have collaboration with partners or not, there is a component of time, staff time and staff training involved here. And I don't think people realize that as people get older, their needs increase. But if you start linking that to aging at home, then you're going to need a very much more directive, maybe much more proactive stance. And it means our staff, our SSCs and possibly the other ones, are going to end up doing far more wraparound, far more time on getting tenants referred out and following up on referrals and following up, make sure it's done. So I don't know where to put that, but I think either a further development of a sentence or a separate point under KPI. I think it's going to, and we've mentioned this in terms of staff mentioning they're getting to the point of reaching their capacity, the extra workload. Well, the workload will increase, right? And relating to the accessibility, the physical accessibility here I'm speaking of, and that can include not only obviously doorways and stuff like that, but sight and sound supports. There are some of those resources available. I don't know how timely they are. So if a tenant comes back from a hospital stay, maybe needs some changes to the washroom, who does that get referred to? Who does it? Is it us? Is it Toronto Community Housing? They used to have a whole accessibility department. I don't know if they still do or not. Because they had a whole design component there too. People could come in and do it. And I just think it needs to be recognized. Secondly, under foster innovation, we've lost innovation as a objective, I believe, and you've placed it here under this particular objective. I still don't want to lose the objective of innovation. So whether we add it in or expand it somehow, I don't know, but I just want to add my point about innovation. I don't want to lose sight of it and have it get subsumed under a category that doesn't highlight it enough. Those are my points.
So through the chair, I'll just flag that with regards to accessibility, you had a kind of a question embedded in there. And yes, the accessibility is something that Toronto Community Housing, there's an accessibility program that we have through our arrangement with them. So they have accessibility coordinators. We support some of the intake through our teams that are in the, in the buildings, our SSCs, but the accessibility program is actually delivered through Toronto Community Housing.
That's
the type
what I
of
thought,
accessibility, physical accessibility changes. There'll be some things that we would do, minor accessibility upgrades. And with regards to innovation being in this place rather than an objective on its own, previously, as it was, you're accurate, it was an objective, but it was something that it didn't seem to have the sort of linkage back to the other aspects, and it kind of stood out on its own as an area. I know in concept the thought was that would actually give it kind of prominence, and so I mean we're open to feedback from the committee here as to what you'd like. And this, when we went through innovation, it was something that it was felt was sort of, we could foster the culture by embedding it in different spots, and that's, for example, why we have a combination of foster innovation as an initiative, and then have sort of flagged with the asterisk the innovative projects throughout, to give you an idea how it sort of layers across different aspects of the strategic directions. It doesn't sort of sit on its own in the broader context, but we're open to, of course, the feedback of the committee. So.
And Tom, do you want to jump in? I know Jess has a question, but I think you might have a comment about this.
Let the committee comment first, and then I'll.
But did you have a question, a thought about innovation? Because
I did. Just building on what Grant had said, and I don't know whether Beam has a perspective, but Brenda, this was an area that there was a great deal of discussion, and
yes, I'm certain.
Part of it started with, when we were doing our staff sessions, they feeling that, they are doing innovation kind of
Yes.
in their day-to-day work. And so, we shifted more, okay, let's focus on what is kind of transformational innovation within the context of these other objectives. And so I think that's important to reflect on that. And then comments where, innovation is a means to your outcome, right? It's not necessarily kind of a standalone. It's a way you work to achieve aging at home, to achieve, tenant voice. And so that based on that feedback, we have structured it. It has been structured in this way.
I can appreciate that, but I would then suggest that you need to do a foster innovation in each objective then. So highlight it in each objective. If you want to integrate it, following through with your comments.
Yeah.
I understand that two perspectives. Then I would suggest it needs to be repeated in either all of the objectives or at least some of the objectives. I think the innovation thing for me is what will make us unique and different, and I don't want to lose that in terms of our role and position as a major provider of housing for seniors, right? So it's not just the nitpick and have theoretical things. It's to what makes us different than just other housing providers. Well, I think it's because we are doing these things differently.
Just adding on that through the chair to the committee, so and to Brenda. So does one of the thoughts was with the asterisks on these, right? That asterisk then. So when you look particular in any of these columns, it has the asterisk. So that is innovative work, and those would be in the other objectives as well. So it's not a separate column, but it is an asterisk to identify that innovative work.
I don't know if vision-wise, I don't know if I see those asterisks or not.
So if you just look, for example, under foster, or if you look under, enable access to health and community supports, under strategic projects, develop tenant health literacy program, there's an asterisk. So that's considered a transformational innovation.
I see.
And maybe it's the formatting. We may need to actually really highlight that we are committed to innovation, and every and like an asterisk gets a bit lost. So just actually let's take the feedback in terms of just finding a way to actually make sure that it's actually stands out that we're committed to that.
Thank you.
Good point. Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Brenda. Jess?
To my previous point about awareness, there is a group in the TSHC which is a complex tenancies team.
Yeah.
Which is supposed to assist residents with expanded needs, and people by and large are not aware of this team. So how does one access that information? And because I think that it's a two-way street. It's great to have the team, but if people aren't aware of how to access it, whether it's a CSC or tenant, then it's sort of not doing its job. The second point is perhaps column 2, deep in collaboration with our partners, inasmuch as we are not mandated by law to provide services, perhaps that should be number 1, and enable access to health and community supports should be number 2. This would then provide a better flow of understanding of what comes first and who does what first and when. The third one may be a bit preemptive because the group has not yet been formed, but STAC is trying to become involved with peer-to-peer consultations. And this isn't reflected yet in this document. So I'd ask that it be taken away, and as the STAC group, the roadshow, comes to fruition, that it can be reflected in this future looking document.
Yeah, Jess, it's funny. I was thinking, Grant and Tom, maybe there's something that we put in the foster innovation that is actually tenant led. Like, you know, Jess is actually regularly bringing to our attention some very innovative, you know, tenant led advocacy and planning. And maybe, you know, I don't see that in a lot of it is actually kind of staff focused, and maybe we could capture that. And then it doesn't actually have to be the specific project yet, but that we ensure that there's space for that, and that we see that, you know, that is innovation, that we actually have tenants like you, Jess, and others that are actually leading to us into the future.
Yeah, but I think through you, Madam Chair, I think that's captured because, you know, we can create the environment to allow this to happen, right?
Yep.
I don't think necessarily that we want to sort of, it is creating that environment to foster innovation. And I think staff have captured some of that in there. And it doesn't have to be staff innovation. It can be innovation across the TSHC community. So I worry a bit about sort of cataloging all the innovations that are coming out, regardless of where it originates. I think the important consideration here is creating that environment and allowing both tenants and staff the flexibility and the room and the empowerment to innovate and to grow.
Thanks, Fareed. I think just as long as the tenants see themselves in it and they see that they are actually represented. So their thoughts. Tom, I think you had your hand up after one of Jess's. No, you're okay.
Is it still up? Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
Thank you.
I
great.
can't
Thank
see
you.
it.
That's okay. Thank you for the rich feedback on this one. Any other? I don't see any other hands up. So we'll go to the next objective.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So objective 4, so I'll just remind, this was previously enabler 1. So just for kind of reference, we've retained the title of the objective to be organizational excellence. But what has changed here is previously under organizational excellence, there were actually 9 strategic initiatives, and we've streamlined that down to 3 now. And it's much more focused in this updated view. And I'll just highlight, this was an area, for example, where in the previous strategic directions, there were a number of more operational sort of projects or initiatives, activities that were noted. So for example, it had that we would do our budget every year. We do that regardless of having a strategic directions or not. It noted that we would do our annual report every year. So things like that have been removed. You're not seeing those operational things anymore. And different aspects around some of the things that were there before around governance or technology have been embedded now in context of these 3. So I'll just work through these. So the first proposed initiative is to focus on continuous improvement and service consistency. The second is to strengthen financial sustainability and risk management. And the third is to strengthen operational sustainability. And I'll quickly go through it. The overall here is about ensuring we have public service excellence, and we're doing effective, efficient, and innovative service delivery. So under focus, continuous improvement and service continuity, you can see some KPIs coming out of the survey or quality improvement projects, but under the projects themselves, we've got a rebuild of our KPI dashboard. So that's what we've been bringing to the board, for example, for the last 3 years. We're rebuilding that, enhancing senior specific policies, enhancing our data collection and analysis capabilities, using data to inform our directions and our decisions, completing an accessibility quality improvement project, which we talked about earlier. So this is looking at the barriers that our tenants face from an accessibility perspective and how we can remove those barriers. Exploring the use of artificial intelligence. This is something where we see an opportunity to look at AI use cases and how we might actually embed that in future aspects of how we support the overall perspective of our strategic directions, for example, to develop organizational service standards and to strengthen the board strategic role. So to leverage the board where we need to or should or can in all of this work. Well, quite a few projects in that space. Under strengthened financial sustainability and risk management, we've talked about developing a strategic financial plan. We've never had a strategic financial plan at Toronto Seniors Housing. We have participated with TSHC and work on strategic financial sustainability planning, but we haven't developed our own. We know there's going to be future work on the cost allocation model with Toronto Community Housing and that arrangement. We want to review our enterprise risk management framework and make sure it's still in alignment with what we need. And we are already working on this. Updating our emergency response plan are really important aspects of supporting our tenants. That's together with TSHC. You'll see we have financial sustainability indicators need to be identified here. And then under strengthen operational sustainability, this is we're looking at building on some of our partnerships and relationships. So renewing, reviewing, and setting future directions for the service delivery agreement with Toronto Community Housing, a big agreement that we get a lot of support with from TSHC that we need to review. Renewing the OACH agreement, clarifying the terms with the City of Toronto, for example, on an operating agreement. We see this as all strategic elements of how we make sure we have improved agreements with our partners. I'll pause for any questions on this one.
Brenda?
Hi. Under the third one, strengthen operational sustainability. Do we have a separate agreement with the city in addition to our agreement with Toronto Community Housing Corporation? Or is that something we're working towards?
It's something we're working towards.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
And the need for that is what? You want clarity in our relationship with the city that's not mediated only through Toronto Community Housing. Is that the reasoning?
Yeah. So normally as a housing provider, we would have what's called an operating agreement with the service manager, being the City of Toronto. And we have not, currently we don't have an operating agreement with the city. We have an accountability framework associated with our work with the city, but not an agreement. So we want to formalize that relationship with the city. We also see it as an opportunity to help support things like our request to have, subsidy flow directly to TSHC as well. So this is an area that we are working, and we'll work with the city as to what their plans could be. It was actually something on the previous strategic directions as well.
Okay. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Fareed, did you have any comments? You look like you're ready to speak. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks, Madam Chair. The only point I was going to make, and I think this is one that I think perhaps should have been made at the onset, is that we're going to have an operational plan as well to sort of bring this to life, as it were. There's reference here to a financial strategic plan. And then, some of this stuff will cascade down into a specific work plan associated with accountability from each director and Tom and others. So I think to the chair's point at the beginning of the meeting, it's the focus is on the sort of the big ticket items. So if you don't see, for example, a particular initiative reflected in here, I don't think the view is that that is lost. It's that some of this would probably be operational and in the operational plan. So I think we need to perhaps also keep that in mind as we contemplate changes and make comments. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Those are good points, actually, Fareed. I was wondering about that.
Okay. Were there any other hands? I can't.
Sorry.
See.
Again.
Sorry.
I was going to say also develop organizational service standards. I was wondering whether that's more customer service standards rather than organizational.
That's fair. Thank you. Yeah, that would be in the customer service standard zone. So yes.
No one a wordsmith. I'm cognizant.
No, that's it's okay to words. I take that back, actually, because sometimes words actually carry a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
Thanks, Fareed. Yeah, I just didn't want to revisit things that were like are already agreed upon. But those are really good comments, Brenda.
And I like
go ahead.
Sorry, Brenda. I like the strengthening the board role, because I think the strategic role and the board experience that the members bring to bear on the conversation is something that I think needs to be acknowledged, and I'm glad to see that in here.
Yeah, I thought that too. I think a strong organization has that in place, so that's great. Brenda?
Just a quick question. The same asterisk, does that mean innovation? I noticed in the chart
Yes.
here. Because
So
that's,
through the chair, where you see an asterisk next to a project here,
yeah,
it does indicate that we're seeing it as a transformational, innovative type project.
okay. I think that needs to be highlighted. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel-
maybe it's noted on every page that
Yeah.
We could do
or you
that for
use
sure.
maybe we come up with a more
Format.
catchy thing that's
Yeah.
like a circle with an innovation, like with an I in it, that's not just an asterisk or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point, and we'll take that back.
We'll have to
And
trademark it though.
Well, just so it's clear when you,
Yeah.
my issue was clarity of what is it saying here?
Yeah.
And
no, thank you for the feedback, and
Yeah,
we will look at that. There was a point really on in the presentation, but it's obviously not sort of resonating, and
Yeah,
we want to make it clear. So
yeah, because
Yeah, it's good.
following through from your point and staff's input about they feel they are doing innovation in different areas. So then let's say that and let's highlight it. That's my thought.
yeah, thank you.
Madam
Thanks.
Chair, Jeff Goodwin has his hand raised.
Yep, I see it. Jess?
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee. I'm interested in exploring the use of artificial intelligence. This has many ramifications as well as potential challenges. I've seen presentations which are talking about predictive modeling through AI for healthcare results, which is the primary focus of TSHC, but could become an augmentation to TSHC policies and plans. I think that we have to be careful about that for the obvious privacy issues as well. Structurally, use AI to create programming or planning may be a good thing because they can review materials faster than human beings can. But to have it as a primary source of information or a way to monitor or residents may not be the best answer.
And through the chair, I'll just sort of. That's why to your point, that's why we explore the use of artificial intelligence. And although it's not noted here, there'll need to be areas around risk management, policy, and other things to help guide that. And so we do see this as something that'll evolve over the course of this 4-year period we're talking about.
Great. No, those are good points, and maybe it's maybe it's obvious, but it's like explore artificial intelligence with relevant tenant and staff engagement, something like that, so that we're not doing things that wouldn't have some tenant input, but we don't necessarily have to put that in there. But I think that's hopefully implied.
Yes,
All
no,
right,
it's a fair point. On any of these projects that you see at Tenant Connect, in context, we would definitely look at how we would bring tenants into the conversation, our advisory committee and others. So,
Great. That's great.
Was there anything before we go to the last objective?
I don't see any other hands, so maybe we go to the objective 5.
Right. So objective 5 is titled Organizational Capacity and Staff Well-Being. Previously, this objective was called Employer of Choice, and you'll see the Employer of Choice language is still there. It's captured in a different way now. And in terms of the initiatives, previously we had 5 initiatives under this, what was previously an enabler as well, but now an objective. And now we've streamlined that and focused this into 3 initiatives. Sorry, I shouldn't say objective. I misspoke there. Let me start over. There were 5 initiatives, and we've streamlined that into 3 initiatives now. You will see, though, a number of projects layered into this as well, so there's quite a bit in here. So the 3 initiatives are enhanced talent acquisition, retention, and career pathways. And this is about attracting and retaining top talent while providing these clear pathways and opportunities for people to thrive in their roles. The second is to embrace inclusion and well-being, so to build a workplace culture that incorporates principles of inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility to ensure staff from all backgrounds feel supported and engaged. And this aligns very much with the IDEA strategy that has already and previously come to the board, for example. And then the third is to improve learning and performance management. So to provide meaningful learning and development opportunities to help equip staff with the knowledge, skills, and tools to support seniors and foster consistently high performance. When you look at the KPIs in this, we do know there's some work to be done here. So this is an area we'll continue to work on and look to be more specific to. And you look at some of the projects. So under the first initiative, enhanced talent acquisition, retention, and career pathways, you'll see review and improve the talent acquisition retention strategies or processes, develop staff recognition and mentorship and support programs, and then ultimately achieve an employer of choice designation. This was a bit of the feedback we got previously, is because we didn't actually have that designation, it was felt as something we had to work towards. With regards to embracing inclusion and well-being, we've got expand health, safety, and wellness programs. So this is the well-being aspect in particular. We've got developed targeted strategies to address representation gaps, remove barriers to workforce diversity, ensure the IDEA principles are consistently applied, deliver IDEA training. And then under improved learning and performance management, we have projects around developing role-based training, similar to what we had back at the beginning under one of the earlier objectives, deliver senior-specific training, enhance the performance management program, succession management, establish a leadership development program, continue to foster strong partnerships with our labor partners, and enhance the employee engagement survey, feedback, and planning process. A lot of stuff in there. I'll pause and take any questions.
Don't see any. Jess?
Yes. Two issues that have come up recently
I
is
see Lawrence too.
closing the loop back to residents in terms of how do questions or concerns get completed action and then reported back to the person or people who have asked the question. This is an important aspect of creating an enhanced living space. If we don't know what the results are, we can't possibly have confidence that it's been done. So that would be my primary concern. And again, the obvious connection to the stack peer-led research.
Thanks, Jess. And I see Lawrence's hand up.
Thank you, Linda. This employer of choice designation, will it be from CCEOC or Canadian HR Reporter? There are two organizations which give this designation or award.
Through the chair, Lawrence, I'm not sure which organization we would go through. We'd probably look at both and see which maybe was the most effective to align with. And if we can come back and look into that and give you more information.
Yeah, thank you. It's okay. Yeah.
Thanks. Good. And if you have thoughts on that, Lawrence, I'm sure they'd welcome it, because you have you have some knowledge in that area. Any other comments? I guess I'm looking for asterisks. I challenge us to figure out, is there something that we can do that's innovative here in this space that actually leads the pack? So, just thinking about that now that I'm looking for asterisks. And
Yeah,
maybe it's around the ideas piece, like it might be, sharing that with others or trademarking. Like it was a lot of it was very, very developed in-house. Tom and then Brenda.
Yes, through the chair to me. Yeah, I think the idea could be one where it is done, because I know there have been other organizations that have approached us with some of our work that we have done in IDEA. So lot to do, but that could be still an area, particularly as it relates to seniors and the work that we're focusing on, not only with staff, but also with our tenants in that intersection.
That's neat. All right, Brenda, did you have your hand up still? Yeah. Go ahead, Brenda.
Thanks. My only concern, unless I'm missing it, so correct me if I'm wrong, this whole issue about the changing nature of the job and the additional challenges the job might pose as people age in place. I don't know if there's a project here or KPI here where we actively look at staff needs for training and staff needs for expanded staff. Like at what point do you hire more staff, right? And so I don't want to lose our concern about the as we evolve and develop more aging in place strategies, the impact of staff time and skill set and serving the needs of the clientele, right? So I don't know if that's captured somewhere. Grant, if you can.
Yes, through the chair, and thank you, Brenda. It was an idea that was at one point in a draft version of this.
Yes.
Some kind of a staff workload capacity assessment project. And ultimately it still could be something we review for the project layer. It's not there specifically, but things around like role-based training, senior specific training, performance management, some of these things do support the context of what you're getting at. And then there were some things earlier on, but we'll take that back. So thank you.
Yeah, because it's and I recognize it's a collective agreement. So, there's certain things you can and cannot do. And I want to make sure that we know what our lanes are, right? I mean, we can define and define and define to the point where we're going beyond our mandate, right? But I'm just concerned that we don't lose sight of you're not just providing information. As people age, you may have to lead them more with directed referrals, help with follow through on referrals. That's a slightly different job than just providing information, right? So, I mean, it's an operational matter to some extent, so I'll leave that to you, but I just don't want to lose that concern.
Thanks, Brenda. Tom, did you want to respond to that?
I did, yes. That's through the chair to the committee, and Brenda, I think it's really helpful for you to reinforce that, and then how it percolates into this plan, because we are, just recall that we shifted senior services coordinator resources to community service coordinators, right? Because of that need, what we saw with aging at home. The complex tenancy team was a internally created.
That's right.
And in fact, it's being emulated by TSHC now around this complex tenancy team and our environmental health unit. So I think those are things that we want to keep doing to reflect the changing profile of individuals aging at home and their community. So yeah, we need to look to reinforce that. Thanks.
And remember, the complex tenancy team was for people coming into our buildings. And it was specific to that project of getting people out of the campments and tents. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't designed for our current tenant base. It was designed for people coming in. So we can't only rely on the complex tenancy team.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, there may be some recognition opportunities there. As you're speaking, Tom, I think you are speaking about some, I'm not going to use innovation, but I think some best practices that if staff are developing those, one way that you can really support them is to actually make sure that they're highlighted and they're shared with others and they can present, and that actually makes people often feel much more recognized in the work that they do. So somehow, how are they getting that? Yeah.
Through the chair, just one final point, just for clarity. Now, the complex tenancy now is not just for Rapid Rehousing Initiative; it is for other tenants. So that's
okay.
So just FYI. Thanks.
That's great. That's great.
Okay. When did that happen? Just recently?
Oh, I can defer to Brad on that, but I would think it was at least it was like 1 or 2 years ago. So Grant just chipped in since the start. So maybe
okay, so it's not new. It's good for us. Maybe there's something that keeping the board informed of things that we should know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's great. Jess?
Yeah, speaking of continuity, as we have a larger demand for staff to provide services, there's also a requirement or need for staff to be able to fill in for coworkers. So having the continuity of what the issues are for a specific building needs to flow sideways or upwards or downwards, whatever is appropriate, sorry, in order for issues to be dealt with in a timely manner. I'd really like to see that enhanced talent acquisition, retention, pathways for inclusion.
And thank you. If I could just through the chair, excuse me, some of that I think, Jess, could be addressed in those customer service standards, for example, that we had on the previous objective of an aspect of how to support that. Because I know you've raised this before, and that would be an element, I think, to help in that space.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. So where would you like to go next, Grant?
So at this stage, we have concluded walking you through, and we've been taking notes throughout, and Beam has been with us behind the scenes as well. And our intent, and they're still here, and our intent at this stage is to take this feedback and work through any revisions. I think the one thing that maybe we would just, if we could conclude, we're getting close to time, I know, but if we could conclude with a bit of discussion on the innovation as an objective versus an initiative. So, you know, that, you know, in the context of the future strategic directions, you know, when we were at the, it's interesting because this was actually a discussion in the original strategic directions as well. When they were first proposed back in 2020, end of 2022, beginning of 2023, there were 3 objectives and 2 enablers. And the board actually, you know, asked for an innovation objective. So that was added in at the time.
Yeah.
And then the thing about I think when it was added in at the time, there wasn't necessarily a lot of detail around it in the context of when it was added. It was certainly something that's had some focus and some projects and work did get done in that space. And it's been a guide. But through the feedback we've had in this, and we've talked a bit about it here, you know, in the future strategic direction, it could be reflected either as an objective or as an initiative aligned into aging at home and with the aspects of innovation more clearly identified throughout. Either way, I think it can work. It kind of depends on what the preference of the committee is. If you'd like to see it, you know, at that higher level, it will definitely get more prominence up there.
Yeah, exactly.
In the context of the objectives. I think if it went up there, we might look at doing a couple of initiatives in that space versus just one. And we probably would only have 2 initiatives under aging at home. However, it somewhat disconnects it from the aging at home objective in doing that. And most of what's in that space right now underneath the work that's being proposed there is aligned to the aging at home. So I'm just going to open it up. And I think this is one of the more significant potential adjustments. We'd like to sort of get some further thoughts before we bring it back to board.
I see a lot of us actually thinking this through. It's a hard one. Jim, help us, Jim.
You're on mute, Jim.
In the very first slide, when you opened up, there was something there with the responsiveness and communication. And I've been waiting to bring that up because there really needs to be improvement on responsiveness and communication. At the last board meeting on the 17th of August, I brought up the issue of applying for rent geared income. The next day, I got a call from Parvaz Udin, who said, "Oh, I was contacted and told you want to dispute the decision on your rent geared income." And I said, "No, that's not it at all. I want to get a decision on my rent geared income." He said, "Okay, well, I'll have to get back to you." That was on the 18th of August. I didn't hear back from him or anyone until yesterday. I got a call from Subrata, who I had I had originally submitted my application through my senior services coordinator, Kate Kukor. And she said that she was going on vacation and needed more documents sent and to send them to Subrata, which I
Jim,
did.
Jim, I'm wondering if it's very, very specific to your situation, and I'm just thinking with this in this meeting, whether there's a way that one of the team members could follow up with you today to
Well, I
just
wish
actually,
they would, because somebody needs to take
because I'm a bit concerned about names
action on
and
this. I mean, yesterday I got the call from Parvaz saying that I met all of that stuff in my own application at City. So when I tried to log, okay, I'll wait and get someone to
but Jim,
contact.
you are like you're illustrating a really good point of something that I think Fareed actually raised right at the beginning, which is service standards.
Yeah.
And and being held accountable. So I actually appreciate that you're bringing it. I'm concerned about some of the names and things, but because we've committed to not doing that. But Tom, did you want to you had your hand up?
I did it, and just through the chair to the committee, to Jim. I'm sorry that this has happened to you in this way, and we will be very diligent. I thought we would be, but clearly from this point we have to be focused in following appropriately and respectfully with you. So we'll move this forward. Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah, and maybe Tom and company, because I think actually, like I said, I do appreciate when Jim brings real life issues, because if this is happening with one of our board members, it's probably happening with many others. So probably the broad piece, right? And I appreciate that, Jim. You actually put flesh on the bone when you describe it, which is actually helpful. But they're going to follow up, and maybe we could consider this in terms of just even the service standard comments. Fareed?
Yeah, thanks. I just want to go back and thanks, Jim, for bringing that up. And I hope staff will follow up and try and sort it out. And I think the customer service piece for me is really fundamental. I mean, that's the common value that for me, it's the entire public service, whether you're federal, provincial, municipal, or an agency, right? And whether it's providing service to a tenant or to a the political establishment or whomever. But I want to go back to the whole issue of entrepreneurialism and innovation. And I think we've got to be a bit we can't force fit this, right? Or we can't kind of force the agenda, as it were. I mean, I just read that EY, for example, is awarding $100 million to employees for coming up with what they refer to as human skills, right? So what I'm kind of interested in, what I have always been promoting, throughout my career in the public service, is creating that foundation for innovation and entrepreneurialism. And I think that's what we need to focus on. The results will come. The results will come, but the foundation of allowing staff to be creative, not risk averse, giving them some flexibility, empowering them, looking at what other organizations are doing, looking across the community and see how can things be done better. We talk a lot about adding to staff, and maybe I'm an outlier here, but also we need to look at efficacy and how can we do things better. And I'm sure when the issue of artificial intelligence was raised, it wasn't as a means of seeing that as a be all and end all, but as another tool that we can use to enhance our efficacy and our service to tenants. So for me, I think the whole issue of entrepreneurialism and innovation is creating that foundation within the organization and with our tenant and with our residents to ensure that they feel comfortable that they can innovate and bring their ideas to the table and share those ideas. And we're talking here about big, bold ideas. I mean, I think, the day-to-day transformation, maybe changing a process, doing something a bit different, that's good. And staff, should always be encouraged to do that. But to me, that's kind of the regular stuff that, we're being paid to do. But how do we think beyond the here and the now? And how, as leaders, how do we inspire and motivate the team to kind of think beyond the here and the now? So that, to me, that's what I'd like to focus on rather than saying, here's an outcome. Because the outcome, I think, and it'll probably take time as well, right? Because, this is not going to happen overnight. We started one with our friend in Hamilton, and we're moving in that direction. And others, I think, are looking at us as a template for that. So for me, that's what would be sort of my comment, is to focus more on those foundational elements facilitate innovation and entrepreneurialism rather than necessarily beginning to sort of measure outcomes, because we can set what the objective would be, and obviously the objective is always to enhance service to our residents and make our staff feel more inspired and enthusiastic. Those are perhaps two maybe softer outcomes, but other more substantive stuff I think would come if we were to create that foundation. Anyway, I don't want to keep us too much longer than that, but I just want to kind of make those comments. Thanks.
Well, that was important. I will get to Brenda. Your comments actually really resonate with me, Fareed. I think it's where we put it, and I wonder if we can. Like the other thing is having you can throw the word around and not have a common understanding of what we're talking about. And for me, it might be important to actually capture some of what Fareed just said in terms of what innovation is. You noted early on, Grant, that innovation was a value in our last objective, and we replaced it with empathy. It's making me, you speaking about that, Fareed, made me think about where it goes and whether it's a value as well. But I'm not sure if that answers what you're looking for, Grant. And I'll let you comment and then go to Brenda.
Yeah, no, through the chair. I think the feedback we received with innovation as a value is it wasn't really resonating with people in that space.
Yeah.
So, but empathy is something that sort of naturally came to the forefront in those conversations. With regards to innovation as an objective versus initiative under another objective, I think we have flexibility. So if I think at the end of the day, whether we put it in one place or the other, we can make it work. And the reason we carved out and put innovation kind of in this blended approach was because of some of the feedback and experience from the first strategic directions where it was felt to be kind of tacked on in a way. And sort of, I don't mean to sound like it wasn't as thoroughly thought through at the time. We certainly have more thought and perspective on it now, 4 years in, and to the point of this discussion here today. So we can take this away and bring back a recommendation.
Okay, that's great. Brenda, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, and a question to Fareed in terms of hearing your points, which I certainly support. Do you see, with respect to Grant's overarching question of do we keep it as a separate innovation entrepreneurship, do we keep that as a separate objective, or do we integrate it into each step? My only concern is it was a direction of the board. I don't want to lose sight of that. And it was our contribution and our experience. And I'm worried that it's going to get somewhat lost. And I know people maybe perhaps didn't quite understand it. Well, then it's our job to make sure it's clarified, right? And it's not either or, it's a process. I think it is a value, quite frankly. I'm not certain I would replace empathy with it. I think I would include it still as a value. So I hear the various points. I still stuck with, I'm just concerned we're going to lose it in some way if we don't identify it separately.
I mean, thanks, and through the chair, Brenda. I mean, I'm comfortable with where it is. I don't have any concerns with it.
Okay.
But like I said, I mean, I think that innovation culture is what needs to be highlighted and permeate across the organization. And if I can make one last point, Madam Chair, and that has to do with empathy. I strongly support empathy because I think if you look at leadership skills and the changing nature of leaders, empathy is now coming up time and time again as one of the most important skills. In fact, in our business now, we call the chief empathy officer, not the chief executive officer anymore, because that's becoming such an important consideration. I like empathy and I like that change. I don't mind innovation where it is. I just don't want us to get too carried away with quote unquote results at this time, but more sort of creating that foundation culture where people can think beyond the here and the now and be inspired. And I don't know what incentives might exist. I mean, incentives perhaps not the right word and not the only thing, but that innovation culture that underlies. And so whether it's sort of a cross-cutting objective or a standalone, I'm agnostic because I think staff do understand that from our perspective, that is something that we care deeply about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really good feedback, and I think everyone is actually supportive of the empathy value.
Yeah.
It was interesting in terms of that we had that innovation. I don't think it's in itself a value. I think fostering a culture of innovation is something that so I think you've got some work to go back and figure out how do we actually make sure that we embed this somewhere. It sounds like people are not saying, pull out all of the innovation piece and put it as a separate objective, but we just need to actually really highlight some of this in a way that it's actually operationalized. Not so much, I agree with Fareed, not so much the individual projects. Innovation is going to come if we set that standard of culture, that culture.
Great.
So through the chair, we want to express a thank you, and I know that we really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with the committee. It's really important to get the feedback out of the committee. I want to acknowledge again the support of Beam and our team that are here today. And we're going to be working based on this conversation today to make some updates to the proposal that was brought forward to the committee today before it goes to the board. And we'll probably loop back on some of these things to make sure that people are comfortable that we're getting to the nut. I think generally we really appreciate and feel that this proposed strategic directions is setting us on a more strategic course actually than the first set of strategic directions, and ultimately we've matured, but there's there are certain things we want to do. We're also going to be working on that roadmap concurrently now, and it might help us to get a bit more level set onto some of those other considerations, resources, etc., that we talked about throughout too. I see Thomas's hand up.
Tom.
Sorry. Yes. Through the chair and to the committee, I just want to kind of echo some of Grant's comments, but just add my own, of course, thanking the board, not only for your participation in the consultation, but also kind of reading the materials and prepping for today, and the really excellent conversation, just a further guide to our work. So really appreciate your leadership and governance on this. And to Beam, they above in terms of this consultation process, we asked them to do more than had originally intended, and they took up the charge, and it was an incredibly kind of extensive consultation, and I think certainly added to the value of the product, and really appreciate their input. And I just would be remiss if I didn't thank Grant, Christine, and Ayushman for the incredible lift that they've done. I think Christine was on like version 15 of this, something like that, the last time we were working on it, and they had just been kind of so focused and spirited in getting to where we are today. So just wanted to thank everyone for who has been involved to this point, and the work that still has to come. But so from your Chief Empathy Officer, thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you all, folks. Actually. Thanks. And you also took the charge. The board asked you to do this in record speed time. We haven't, that's not lost on us that we actually did that, and that I think overall today was a really good session, and actually really there was tremendous support. I think that we were actually at the level that we should be at this point in terms of tweaking, but I think there's a lot of support and excitement about where we're going. So if there isn't anything else, is there anything else that you need from this group, Grant?
Through the chair, nothing else at this stage. Thank you again.
That's great.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Great job.
Yeah, yes, no, this was exciting. Thank you. I look forward to. So we will be bringing this to the board.
What's our next step?
So the team is going to be doing some polishing and making some changes and taking our input, particularly around. I would say that the big input piece that they've got to work their magic with is around the innovation piece. But there was actually much of it was supported today, so that's really encouraging. So the actual formal approval, we're the committee that actually are charged with doing the work on this and bringing it to the board. We won't be doing a whole presentation like this at the board because most of the board members attended and were given all of the materials. We're going to the board for approval, and I think at that point, I think you would just be highlighting any changes that came from this last piece. Is that fair to say, Grant?
So through the chair, yes, and the intent is to have it come to a board meeting that would have to be scheduled in October. So that would have to still be worked through, and we can work together on that. And in the meantime, we would make the changes and continue to work through. For the next Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee, we will bring the draft roadmap. That's at the end of October, and KPIs. So that'll be more complete than what it was today, although it'll be very much built on the view of projects and KPIs that we had in the materials today.
So we're close to that. So, and I think that if you leave this meeting and you feel like, oh my gosh, I forgot to say something, I know that Grant can be reached. So we can get to that. I hope that people that are online appreciated the discussion today. And I think we're just looking for a motion to adjourn. And I'm looking to my two members, Jess, seconded by Jim, all in favor. Terrific. And Jim, we'll be following up with you. Thank you again for providing some real life information too. Enjoy the rest of the first day.
Other than bringing it up
That's
at
okay.
the board, because at this committee,
that's okay.
because
I've run did live stream.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, no, it's fine, Jim. Yeah, we've ended the live stream. We'll follow up.